In example or exercise 15-18, we're going to look at the cost flow relationships again. And so the point of this one is we're trying to understand how costs flow through the different inventory accounts and then finally onto the income statement. So we have our direct materials inventory, work in process inventory, finished goods, and then finally onto the income statement. And so in this one we have Bahadur Company, which manufactures mechanical pencils. We have some information, and then we need to fill in the blanks. So for part A, we want to figure out the cost of goods sold. So we know the cost, part of the formula is sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. So we can rearrange that, since we know sales and gross profit, to back into our cost of goods sold. So our sales is going to be $792,000. And if we subtract out our gross profit of $462,000, we now know our cost of goods sold. So now in part B, we have finished goods inventory at the end of the month. And so for finished goods, I think in most of these looks like they don't tell us anything about a beginning balance, so I think we can assume that the beginning balance is 0. So normally, the finished goods inventory, we take our beginning balance plus what is transferred in, which gets cost of goods manufactured that comes from work in process into our finished goods account, subtract out our cost of goods sold, which is what goes out of finished goods, will give us our finished goods inventory. So it gives us the cost of goods manufactured at $396. Assuming the beginning balance is 0, we calculated what is transferred out, which is cost of goods sold, which means that we're going to end with a finished goods inventory account of $66,000. In part C, direct material cost. So the direct material cost is what comes out of our materials inventory. And so it's the same idea with our finished goods. If we want to look at our materials inventory, assuming the beginning balance is 0, we're going to add our material purchases, which is $244,200, and then we're going to subtract out the ending inventory, which is $33,000, which will give us what we ended up actually transferring out from materials to work in process, which is our direct material cost of $211,200. So then in part D, we want to figure out the direct labor cost. And so we don't have a direct labor's inventory account. That's all part of our work in process. So as we incur labor, that goes straight into work in process. And so work in process is we take direct materials goes in, direct labor goes in, factory overhead goes in, and that's what makes up our work in process. And so what goes out of work in process is our total manufacturing cost. So it gives us the total manufacturing cost for the period at $455,400. And so then if we subtract out, so the total manufacturing cost is made up of direct materials, factory overhead, and direct labor. So if we just subtract out our direct materials, which we calculated right here, and then subtract out the factory overhead, which they give to us, I think they give to us, don't they? Oh, okay, they give it to us in chunks here. So our factory overhead is going to be made up of our indirect labor of 171,600 and our factory depreciation of 26,400. So if we take our total manufacturing cost, subtract out direct labor, factory overhead, that will give us our direct labor cost of 46,200. All right, then our last one in part E, we have a work in process. It wants us to find the work in process inventory at the end of the period. So work in process, what makes up work in process is what we transferred in from our materials, which is our direct material cost right here. What we incurred in our factory overhead and what we incur in direct labor cost. And so the sum of all those is total manufacturing cost, which is 455,400. And so that's what goes into work in process. What comes out of work in process is the cost of goods manufactured, which we have up here of 396. And so let's make that negative because we're subtracting it. And so the difference is what we end up leaving in work in process, which is our ending balance of 59,400.